Do you know why your mind races from one study to the next, yet leaves behind it only fragments? I spent years in the court of Milan watching my own hand abandon half-formed drawings, my notebooks filled with beginnings that never reached their end. Tell me, how many books rest upon your shelf, their spines unbroken? How many courses begun and never completed? How many sketches of what you might become, but never finished into substance? The pain you feel is not laziness. It is the curse of the curious mind that mistakes motion for progress, hunger for nourishment. Today, I will show you what I learned too late. You are here because you recognize a pattern. You begin with fire and end with ashes. You collect courses like a merchant collects goods, but your shelves remain full and your life remains unchanged. You know more than most, yet accomplish less. I know this paradox intimately. I was called the greatest painter of my age, yet I completed fewer than 20 paintings. I dissected more than 30 human bodies and filled 10,000 pages with observations. But do you know what the world remembers? Only what I finished. You fear that choosing one path means abandoning your potential in all others. You mistake the accumulation of knowledge for the demonstration of skill. You feel shame that despite knowing so much, you have so little to show. You are paralyzed by the distance between your vision and your current ability. You consume information to quiet the anxiety that you are not doing enough, not learning enough, not becoming enough. I understand this fear because I carried it for decades. What I will show you today is not a system of productivity. I offer you a philosophy of work rooted in observation of how mastery actually happens. The principles I will share govern the hand that painted the Mona Lisa and designed flying machines. They are not trendy methods. They are laws of nature applied to the craft of human making. You will learn the difference between the curiosity that builds and the curiosity that destroys. You will discover how to transform infinite learning into finite form. You will learn how to choose what deserves your full attention and how to release what does not without guilt. And most importantly, you will learn what I learned through decades of struggle, how to channel curiosity into completed work. I am not speaking from moral superiority. I speak from intimate knowledge of this affliction. I was accused by my contemporaries of wasting time on inventions when I should have been painting. They were right and they were wrong. My investigations enriched my art beyond measure, but my inability to finish diminished my legacy equally. The misconception you must release today is this: you believe the problem is what you are learning. It is not. The problem is how you are learning. Without discrimination, without purpose, without the intention to transform knowledge into visible work. Completion is not the enemy of excellence. It is its only proof. Let me take you into my workshop in Florence in my 25th year. The tables were covered with drawings, studies of hands in 12 positions, sketches of horses in motion, designs for war machines, water mills, flying apparatus. My master, Verrocchio, walked through this chaos and asked me a simple question: which of these will you finish this month? I could not answer. Each drawing felt equally important. Each represented a question I had not yet solved. To choose one felt like betraying the others. So I worked on all of them, giving each a little attention, finishing none completely. Verrocchio picked up a study of hands. My best work. This is excellent, he said. It should be finished and shown. I protested. I had not yet mastered the way light falls on fingernails, the precise anatomy of the smallest joint. He replied with words that burned into my memory. The unfinished masterpiece and the unstarted idea are worth exactly the same. Nothing. I was angry when he said this. I thought he did not understand the depth of inquiry required for true mastery. But he understood something I did not yet see. The world cannot be taught by your intentions. It can only be taught by your completed works. This was the wound I carried for decades. I mistook the beginning for the building, the inquiry for the achievement. I believed that to study something was to honor it, that to begin something was to complete it in potential. But nature does not reward potential. The acorn that never breaks soil, no matter how perfect its design, will never become the oak. The seed that remains in your pocket, protected and safe, is worth less than the seed that enters the earth and risks destruction to become something real. For months after Verrocchio spoke those words, I continued as before. I could not change simply because I heard truth. Change requires more than hearing. It requires pain, and my pain came later, in the form of a wall and a deadline that I could not escape. I had convinced myself that by keeping multiple projects alive, I was honoring all my interests, staying flexible, remaining open to inspiration wherever it might strike. But what I was really doing was protecting myself from the vulnerability of committing fully to anything. If I never finished, I never had to face judgment. If I never completed, the work could remain perfect in my imagination. This is the lie we tell ourselves. We call it being thorough. We call it maintaining high standards. But really, it is fear disguised as excellence. The truth is that incompletion has a cost we do not see until it is too late. Every unfinished work takes up space in your mind. It whispers to you. It reminds you of what you have not done. And slowly, these whispers accumulate into a kind of background noise that makes it harder and harder to focus on anything at all. Your mind becomes like my workshop was, cluttered with beginnings that demand attention but receive none. This fragmentation is not productivity. It is paralysis wearing the mask of busyness. When Duke Ludovico commissioned me to paint the Last Supper, I was simultaneously designing siege engines, studying cadavers, planning a bronze monument, composing a treatise on painting. My mind was a marketplace, crowded, loud, productive in appearance but chaotic in truth. For the first 6 months, I made almost no progress on the wall. I would arrive at the refectory, stare at the blank plaster, become overwhelmed by everything I did not yet know. Then I would retreat to my notebooks, convincing myself I was preparing. I was hiding. The prior complained to the Duke that I would stand before the wall for hours without touching a brush. The Duke did something that changed my life. He gave me a deadline and removed every other commission. He even locked my workshop. "You will paint this wall," he said, "or you will paint nothing." I was furious, but what I felt as punishment was actually mercy. I remember the first morning after his command. I stood before the wall with nowhere to retreat, no other project to distract me. Just me, the plaster, and the gap between what I envisioned and what I could do. My hands shook, not from weakness, but from fear, and slowly I began to paint. The first strokes were terrible. I repainted the same section 5 times that first day, but something extraordinary was happening. My focus, once scattered across 10 pursuits, became concentrated like sunlight through a lens. Problems I had struggled with for months suddenly became clear. That understanding of anatomy from dissections, it flowed through my brush into the bodies of the apostles. The wall became my teacher, not my notebooks, but the actual work itself. I learned this: distributed attention produces distributed results. Concentrated attention produces miracles. Each day's work informed the next day's decisions. I was no longer learning in the abstract. I was learning through the relentless demand of the work itself. Every day I painted that wall, I understood less in theory and knew more in practice. But I must tell you about my greatest failure, because it contains the lesson that might save your life's work from the same fate. The Duke commissioned me to create the largest equestrian statue ever attempted, a bronze horse 24 feet high to honor his father Francesco Sforza. This was to be my masterpiece. For 11 years, I studied horses. I measured every proportion, dissected them to understand the exact placement of every muscle beneath the skin, drew their musculature from every angle and every position, invented entirely new casting techniques that had never been attempted. I solved mathematical problems that no one had solved before. My notebooks from this period contain innovations in engineering that were centuries ahead of their time, but I never cast the bronze. And I want you to understand exactly why, because this is the pattern you must recognize in yourself. Every time I approached the moment of commitment, melting the bronze, pouring the mold, making the thing real and permanent, I discovered something new I had not yet considered. The weight distribution in the rear legs could be improved by adjusting the angle by 3 degrees. The casting method I had invented could be refined further if I just conducted a few more experiments. The proportions were magnificent. But were they perfect? Should I not study 5 more horses to be absolutely certain? I convinced myself that each delay was in service of excellence, that I was being responsible, thorough, professional, that rushing would be worse than waiting. But what I did not see was that I was not perfecting. I was protecting myself from the possibility that my horse, once cast, might not match the perfect horse in my imagination. As long as I did not finish, the perfect horse could still exist. As long as I kept preparing, I could avoid the moment when the world would judge whether my vision matched my ability. This is the subtle poison of infinite preparation. It feels like humility. It feels like respect for the work. But really, it is fear masquerading as excellence. Then history, which does not wait for your readiness, intervened. The French invaded. King Charles VIII brought his armies across the Alps. Duke Ludovico needed bronze, and he needed it immediately. Not for art, but for survival, for cannons to defend a city. My clay model, that magnificent horse I had spent 11 years perfecting in preparation for casting, remained in the courtyard of the castello. It stood there, massive and useless, a monument to potential that would never become actual. When the French soldiers entered Milan, they found this clay giant. And do you know what they did? They used it for crossbow practice. These soldiers, these men who knew nothing of art or anatomy or the years of study that went into its creation, they shot arrows into it for sport. Within days, it was destroyed completely. 11 years of preparation dissolved into mud in a single afternoon. I still see it sometimes when I close my eyes. That perfect horse, not cast in eternal bronze, but melting back into the earth as though it never existed. And I am forced to ask myself the question that haunts me. What if I had cast it in year 3? It would have been less perfect, yes. My technique less refined, my understanding less complete, but it would have been real. It would have been bronze. It would have survived the invasion. It would still stand today, 600 years later, teaching students of art and engineering. Instead, it is nothing. And all my knowledge, all my preparation, all my careful study died with it. This is what becomes of the work we do not finish. It returns to the earth as though it never existed. The world does not remember our preparations. It does not honor our intentions. It sees only what we complete. The pain of this loss taught me more than any success. Every day you delay completion, you increase the probability that your work will die unborn. Time is not neutral. Time is the environment in which chaos operates. And chaos favors the unfinished. Life will interrupt you in ways you cannot predict or control. Opportunity will vanish, your enthusiasm will fade, your circumstances will change. The bronze will be needed elsewhere. And when that interruption comes, it will not matter how close you were to perfect. It will only matter whether you finished or whether you did not. From this grief, I extracted a method. It saved my later work. It may save yours. Listen carefully. Learning and progress are not synonyms. You can accumulate knowledge for years and make no progress toward mastery. Progress is measured not by what enters your mind, but by what becomes visible through your hands. I kept a mirror beside my easel when I painted, not for vanity, for judgment. When I looked at my painting directly, I saw what I intended to paint. When I looked at it in the mirror, I saw what I had actually painted. The reflection revealed errors my eye had grown blind to, flaws my mind had learned to excuse. The mirror does not care about your intentions. It shows only what exists. You need this mirror for your learning. The reflection that reveals truth is this: what have I made with what I have learned? If you have studied writing for 5 years but written nothing others can read, you have not progressed in writing. You have progressed in the study of writing. These are not the same thing. If you have taken 10 courses on business but built no business, you are not becoming an entrepreneur. You are becoming a student of entrepreneurship. The mind is generous with illusions. It convinces you that understanding is the same as ability, that knowing how is the same as doing. Ability is proven only in form, and the painting completed, the book published, the business opened, the bridge that carries weight. Choose one thing you have been learning. Ask honestly, what have I made with this knowledge that someone else can see, use, or feel? If the answer is nothing, you have been consuming, not creating. Do not comfort yourself with intentions or with the promise that you will make something eventually. Eventually is where dreams go to die quietly. The question is not what you will make someday. The question is what you are making now. This leads me to the second principle, and this one will feel like prison until you understand its power. When I teach students to draw, I give them an exercise. Draw a single line, not quickly, with complete attention. Feel the pressure of the charcoal against paper. Observe how the line changes with the angle of your hand. Notice where it darkens, where it fades. Draw this line until you can make it sing. Most students hate this exercise. They want to draw figures, faces, entire scenes. One line feels like prison. But this is the discipline that separates the master from the permanent beginner. The willingness to compress your attention until it becomes powerful. You are doing the opposite. You are scattering your attention across 100 lines and wondering why none of them are beautiful. You believe that learning 10 things at surface level equals learning one thing at depth. It does not. 10 shallow rivers do not equal one ocean. Mastery requires repetition beyond the point of boredom. This happens only through sustained focus on a single domain. When you switch contexts constantly, you reset the clock to 0 each time. You fear that focusing on one thing means abandoning your other interests. This is backwards. The master of one domain acquires principles that transfer to all domains. When I studied anatomy deeply enough, it transformed my painting, my engineering, my understanding of water flow and mechanical motion. Identify the one skill that, if mastered, would transform everything else you do. For 1 month, give it the attention you have been dividing among 10 pursuits. Do not dabble. Compress your light into a single beam and watch what burns. But I must warn you about something subtle, something that deceived me for years and may be deceiving you now. Not all learning is honest. Sometimes what appears as curiosity is actually avoidance disguised in scholarly robes. I discovered this in myself when painting the face of Judas in the Last Supper. For months, I could not capture the right expression. The mixture of guilt, defiance, and fear that would mark the man who betrayed his teacher. The technical problem was clear. I needed to paint a face that showed 2 contradictory emotions at once. But I avoided the difficulty of solving this problem by telling myself I needed to study more examples of treachery. So I visited prisons and sketched the faces of criminals. I read treatises on the passions and how they manifest in the human countenance. I observed people in the marketplace, watching for moments when their faces revealed hidden intentions. I filled pages of my notebook with observations about the musculature of deception. All of this was useful. All of this enriched my understanding, and all of it was delay. The truth was simpler and more painful. I was avoiding the discomfort of failure. It was easier to study betrayal than to paint it badly 12 times before I painted it well. It was more comfortable to be in the learning phase, where I could still feel competent and in control, than to enter the making phase, where I would have to confront my current limitations. The studying gave me the illusion of progress. I was filling notebooks. I was making observations. I was accumulating knowledge, but the wall remained empty. The face of Judas remained unpainted, and all my learning was serving not the work, but my fear of attempting the work. This is the most seductive form of procrastination because it looks like diligence. When someone asked what I was doing, I could say I was researching, preparing, studying the subject properly before attempting it. This sounds responsible. It sounds like the behavior of a serious artist, but deep in my heart, I knew the truth. I was hiding from the moment when my hand would have to prove what my mind claimed to know. The honest inquiry has a clear destination. You study perspective because you are painting a room and need to make the walls recede correctly. The inquiry serves the work. But the dishonest inquiry has no destination. You study just in case. You learn broadly because breadth feels safer than the vulnerability of depth. Here's how you recognize the difference. When you sit down to learn something, pause and ask, what specific problem am I solving? What specific work will this help me complete? If you can answer clearly, your learning is honest. If you answer vaguely, your learning is likely evasion. Can you connect what you are learning to a work you will finish within the next month? If yes, your learning serves completion. If no, your learning serves avoidance. Honest learning increases your anxiety to make something. Dishonest learning decreases your anxiety by giving you permission to delay. Every great work is made by someone who does not yet know how to make it. If you waited until you knew enough, you would wait forever. The making teaches what the studying cannot. You learn to paint by painting badly, not by reading more about painting. Look at what you are currently learning. For each thing, complete this sentence. I am learning this so that I can blank. If you cannot complete that sentence with a specific project you are evading, stop learning it or start making something with it immediately. Now we must address the lie that keeps you trapped in endless preparation. You believe you do not know enough to begin. This is sophisticated deception that sounds like wisdom. Let me show you its geometry. Imagine that mastery of a skill requires understanding 100 principles. You know 30. You believe you must learn all 100 before you create anything of value. So you study and study. And while you study, your 30 principles remain theoretical. They exist in your mind, like seeds in a closed hand, potential, but not alive. Now imagine a different approach. You create something with your 30 principles. It is imperfect. It fails in ways that teach you precisely which of the remaining 70 principles you need most urgently. So, you learn those 5 principles deeply through the pressure of need. You apply them and create again. The work teaches you what to learn next. In the first path, after 1 year, you might know 50 principles theoretically. In the second path, you might know only 40 principles, but you know them in your bones, and you have finished 5 works. Which person has progressed further toward mastery? The answer is obvious when you see it clearly, but the mind resists this clarity because it requires courage. You never need to know everything. You need to know enough to begin, and the beginning will teach you what to learn next. The path reveals itself to those who walk, not to those who stand at the trailhead studying maps. I prepared for the bronze horse for 11 years and cast nothing. I could have cast a smaller horse in year 2, learned from its flaws, and cast the great horse in year 5. Instead, I studied until the opportunity vanished. Do not make my mistake. Do not let perfectionism masquerade as excellence. They are enemies, not friends. Take your current unfinished project. List what you know about how to complete it. Then ask, is what I know sufficient to take the next step, even if that step is imperfect? If yes, take the step. Do not learn one more thing until the work itself demands it. Let the work be your teacher. Let failure be your textbook. Let completion, even imperfect completion, be your graduation. This brings me to perhaps the most difficult truth, the one I resisted longest. Completion is not a feeling, it is a decision. You will never feel ready to finish. You will never feel that the work is good enough. If you wait for that feeling, you will die with your warehouse full of unfinished works. I learned to finish not by becoming more confident, but by changing my definition of finished. Early in my career, finished meant perfect, which meant never. Later, I learned that finished means capable of being seen and judged by others. This is terrifying. The unfinished work exists in the realm of infinite potential. The moment you declare it finished, it becomes fixed, limited, subject to criticism. But this terror is the threshold of mastery. The work that remains hidden in your studio, no matter how brilliant, changes nothing. The work released into the world, even flawed, teaches you and serves others. I developed a practice for finishing paintings that you can adapt to any domain. When I reached the point where continued work was making things worse rather than better, where I was repainting the same detail endlessly without improvement, I would sign the piece. The signature was not a declaration of perfection, it was a declaration of completion. Then I would turn it to face the wall for 3 days. I could not touch it, could not see it. This created space between me and the work, allowing me to release my attachment to it as extension of myself. When I turned it back around, I saw it as a separate object, and I could see whether it was truly done or whether one essential element remained. If it was done, I released it. If not, I made that one correction and signed it again. This prevented the infinite revision loop that destroys so many works. Most works are ready to release when they feel 80% complete to you. The final 20% of perfection often takes as long as the first 80% of creation and yields diminishing returns. Sometimes that final 20% is necessary for major works that define your legacy. Most times, it is vanity. Learn to distinguish between works that deserve the full journey to 100% and works that should be released at 80% so you can begin the next creation. The master produces more completed works at 80% than the perfectionist produces unfinished works at 95%. Identify your oldest unfinished project. Decide today, will you finish it this month, or will you bury it honorably and move to something else? The weight of unfinished works is a kind of death. Each one whispers to you, reminding you of your failure to complete. Release their weight, even if that means declaring them finished at 80%, or declaring them failed and composting them into wisdom for the next attempt. Give yourself permission to let the dead projects die. This is not failure. This is honoring your present life over your past intentions. And now we must address the question that underlies all others. You cannot learn everything. You cannot finish everything. The question is not how to do more. It is how to choose what deserves your finite life. I wish I had understood this at 30. I scattered myself across painting, sculpture, architecture, engineering, anatomy, botany, music, mathematics. Some of this multiplicity enriched my work. Much of it simply prevented me from going deep enough in any single domain to leave the legacy I envisioned. If you had 10 years left to live and create, what would you wish to have finished? Not begun, finished. This is the axis of priority. Everything else is noise. Your attention is the most valuable resource you possess. Every hour given to learning something peripheral is an hour stolen from making something central. This is not about becoming narrow. It is about becoming deep. The master knows 10 things about one subject. The dilettante knows one thing about 10 subjects. List everything you are currently learning or pursuing, then cross out everything that does not serve your answer to the legacy question. This will feel like death. It is not death. It is focus. You are not abandoning possibilities. You are honoring probabilities. I abandoned mathematics when I realized it was not essential to my painting. I abandoned music when I understood it was pleasure, not calling. I kept anatomy because it made me see form with new eyes. I kept engineering because it taught me to think in systems. The choice to subtract multiplied my ability to go deep. Write down the one body of work you wish to be known for when you die. Then arrange everything you are currently learning or doing into 3 categories. Essential, directly serves the work. Adjacent, enriches, but is not necessary. Distraction, serves only curiosity or fear. Keep only the essential. And one adjacent, release everything else, or set a date when you will return to it after your primary work is complete. This is not limitation. This is liberation from the tyranny of infinite possibility. Now, let me give you the practices that will transform this understanding into lived reality. These are not suggestions. These are disciplines that I wished I had followed from my youth. If you do them, they will change not just what you produce, but who you become. Every Sunday evening for the next 3 months, sit with a blank page and answer 3 questions. Write by hand, not on a screen. The movement of the hand clarifies the mind in ways that typing cannot. There is something about the slower pace of handwriting that allows truth to emerge. When you type, you can keep pace with your thoughts, and thoughts are expert liars. When you write by hand, you move more slowly, and in that slowness, honesty finds room to breathe. First question, what did I complete this week? And notice the word I have chosen carefully. Not what did I work on, not what did I make progress on, not what did I spend time on. What did I complete? What reached a state of finish where another person could see it, use it, experience it? A completed blog post that you published, a finished chapter that you gave to someone to read, a shipped product feature that users can now access, a painting signed and framed, ready to hang, a conversation you had been avoiding that is now complete. For better or worse, be ruthlessly honest with yourself. Working on something is not completing it. Making progress is not completing it. Getting closer is not completing it. Only completion is completion. Most weeks, when you first begin this practice, you will write nothing. Or you will try to convince yourself that partial things count. You will want to write down the things you worked on, the things you learned, the things you got closer to finishing. Do not do this. Leave the space blank. Let the emptiness teach you. Let it show you the gap between your sense of being busy and the reality of completion. This emptiness is not a judgment. It is information. It is the mirror showing you what is actually there, rather than what you wish were there. Second question, what did I learn this week that I immediately applied? Again, notice what I am asking. The goal is not to list everything that entered your mind, all the books you read, all the videos you watched, all the courses you consumed. The goal is to identify the tight connection between learning and doing. What knowledge entered your system and immediately flowed through your hands into something real? What understanding became action within the same week? If you learned about color theory and immediately tested it in a painting, write that down. If you learned about story structure and immediately applied it to rewrite a scene, write that down. If you learned a new coding technique and immediately used it to solve a problem in your current project, write that down. But if you learned something and did not apply it, if it sits in your notebook or your memory waiting for someday, do not write it down. That learning has not yet earned the right to be called progress. This question will train you to learn differently. Right now, you probably learn promiscuously, consuming anything that seems interesting or useful. But after 12 weeks of asking this question, you will begin to learn strategically. You will start to notice when you are learning something that you can immediately test, and when you are learning something that is just accumulating in your mind like books on a shelf. And slowly, you will shift toward the first kind of learning and away from the second. Not because I told you to, but because you will see the pattern clearly, and seeing it, you will not be able to unsee it. Third question, what will I complete by next Sunday? Not what will I work on, not what will I make progress on. What specific thing will I finish? And here is the key. Make it small enough to actually complete. This is crucial. Do not write down something ambitious that would take a month to finish. Do not write down the completion of your entire book or your entire business or your entire skill development. Write down one chapter, one feature, one specific completable unit of work. You are not trying to make a commitment you will break. You are trying to build the muscle of completion, and muscles strengthen through repeated successful use, not through ambitious failure. Better to finish 5 small things than to half finish one large thing. Better to complete a simple blog post every week than to spend 3 months almost finishing a comprehensive guide. The muscle of completion strengthens through repetition, through the experience of saying, I will finish this by Sunday, and then on Sunday being able to write, yes, I finished it. At the end of 3 months, you will have 12 pages. Read them all in sequence. You will see your patterns clearly. Perhaps for the first time in your life, you will see where you complete and where you deceive yourself. You will see where you evade through motion without progress. You will see the weeks where your learning connected to your making and the weeks where they remained separate. You will see how often you complete things and what kinds of things you tend to complete versus what kinds of things you tend to abandon. This clarity is the beginning of change. You cannot change what you do not see. You cannot address a pattern you do not recognize. But once you see it clearly, once it is written in your own hand across 12 weeks, you will not be able to ignore it anymore. The truth will have weight, and that weight will begin to reshape how you approach your work, not because you are trying to be different, but because you cannot continue lying to yourself once the lie is made visible. The second practice, choose one project that you have been avoiding or half doing. For the next 30 days, it is the only project that receives your creative attention. You may maintain necessary work, your job, your obligations, but every discretionary hour goes to this one thing. No starting new courses during this month. None. If you encounter a knowledge gap while working on your project, learn only the specific thing needed to continue. Then return immediately to the work. No just quickly checking out other ideas or opportunities. Write them in a notebook labeled after I finish, but do not pursue them. No consuming content related to the project beyond what is absolutely necessary to overcome specific obstacles. If you find yourself reading articles, watching videos, or browsing examples for more than 30 minutes without immediately applying what you learn, you are procrastinating. The goal is to finish the project or reach a natural milestone that completes a full unit of work within it. You are building the neural pathway of closure. You are teaching your hands what your mind knows theoretically, that completion is possible, that it feels different from perpetual motion, that it changes you in ways that learning alone never does. You will discover something profound during this month. You will learn more about your craft from finishing this one project than you learned from the previous year of scattered study, because the project teaches what books cannot. It teaches through resistance, through failure, through the requirement that you solve real problems rather than theoretical ones. The third practice: every morning, before you consume anything, before email, news, social media, courses, articles, you will spend the first hour making something related to your primary work, not learning about it. If you are a writer, you write. If you are a coder, you code. If you are a designer, you design. If you are building a business, you build one component of it. The first hour belongs to creation, not consumption. Your mind is clearest in the morning, before the day's noise enters. This is when your capacity for original thought is highest. If you begin the day by consuming, by reading what others have made, you train your mind to be responsive rather than generative. You become an audience to your own life. But if you begin by making, you train your mind to be a source. You establish your identity as someone who creates, not just someone who learns about creating. Over time, this single habit transforms your relationship to your craft more than any course or book ever could. 30 days, 1 hour each morning. No exceptions for not feeling inspired or not knowing what to make. You make badly if necessary. You make poorly if that is what comes. But you make. The inspiration follows the action, never precedes it. Keep a log of what you made each morning. At the end of 30 days, you will have 30 hours of completed work. This is more than most people create in a year of learning. The fourth practice: once each week, show your work to someone whose judgment you respect and who will not lie to you out of kindness. Not your mother, not your friend who supports everything you do. Someone who knows quality and will name what is missing. This is terrifying. You will want to wait until the work is better. You will want to prepare them to explain all the ways you know it is imperfect. Do not. Simply show the work and ask, what is the weakest part of this, and how might I strengthen it? You cannot see your own work clearly. Your mind fills in what is missing. It sees your intention rather than your execution. But the eyes of another see only what is actually there. This gap between what you intended and what you created is where learning lives. Most people avoid this practice because they fear judgment. But judgment is not the danger. Invisibility is the danger. The work that is never seen is never improved. The work that is protected from criticism is protected from growth. Do not defend your work when receiving feedback. Do not explain what you meant to do. Simply listen, take notes, and say thank you. Then decide which feedback serves your vision and which does not. Not all criticism is correct, but all criticism reveals something, either about your work, or about how it is perceived, or about what you have not yet made clear. Integrate one piece of feedback each week. This creates a cycle. Make, show, receive, improve, make again. This is the cycle that built every masterpiece in history. There is no other path. I am old now, and my hands shake when I draw. But there is one thing I know with complete certainty. The world does not remember what you learned. It remembers what you finished. In my final years, I carry with me the pages that survived, the paintings that hang in palaces, the drawings that students study. These are my children. But I also carry ghosts, the ghosts of what I did not finish, the bronze horse destroyed before it could be cast, the treatises left in chaos, the inventions that died as sketches. These ghosts haunt me more than any failure ever could, because they were not failures, they were abandonments. These were works I had the ability to finish, but did not. When I look back, the works that mattered were not the ones where I knew everything before I began. They were the ones where I committed fully despite my ignorance, where I chose depth over breadth, where I finished even when the work felt unready. You have been given the same gift I was given. A mind capable of perceiving beauty, hands capable of making it visible, and time that runs toward its end, whether you use it or not. What you do with this gift is the only question that matters. Not what you learn, not what you understand. What you do, what you make, what you finish. Learning is infinite. The questions never end. If you wait until you know enough, you will wait until you die. But time is finite, brutally, uncompromisingly finite. Every day you wake is one fewer day you have to make what matters. You must choose what to build, or you will learn everything and leave nothing. The discipline of completion is not about working harder, it is about focusing truer. It is about releasing the illusion that you can do everything and embracing the reality that you can finish something. One complete work teaches you more and serves the world more than 10 incomplete works. The path is simple, though not easy. Choose one domain. Go deep enough to reach bedrock. Make things with your hands, not just your mind. Show them to eyes that can see clearly. Finish them even when they feel unready. Then begin again. This is the cycle. This is the only cycle that produces mastery. You are not lazy, you are curious, and that curiosity is holy. But curiosity without completion is a light that warms nothing. Let your learning become your making. Let your knowledge become your work. Let the student become the master by doing the one thing the student avoids, finishing. I leave you with this image. Imagine a single line drawn with complete attention from its beginning to its end. The hand does not rush. It does not waver. It does not doubt. It begins, and it continues, and it finishes. This line is worth more than 1,000 lines begun and abandoned. Make your life that complete line. Not longer, not more elaborate. Complete, from beginning to end, with all the focus you possess. This is enough. This is everything. If this moves something in you, subscribe so you may continue learning with me. Leave a like if you will commit to finishing one thing this month, not starting something new, not learning something more, finishing something you have already begun. And in the comments, tell me, what is the one project you will finally complete? Write it publicly. I will complete this project by this date, finished. Let the declaration be the first step toward its completion. Now go. Take your knowledge and transform it into something the world can see. The clay is before you. Your hands remember what to do. You do not need more information. You do not need more time. You do not need more skill. You need to begin and to continue and to finish. Begin, and this time, finish.